Hey everyone and welcome. I'm Joe Brady and today we're going to have a lot of fun with lighting on location. Now in the past I've had to use my speedlights wherever I went. And they're great, but there were times when I really wished I could have had my studio strobes with me. I wished I had the power, the consistency, that's easy for me to say, and flexibility. I got to change this last week for the first time with some really cool tools that I'm going to be excited to share with you today. So we're here today to talk about mixing strobes with speedlights out in the field. So why would you want to use a studio strobe out in the field? Well, certainly one, they're much more powerful. There's a lot more light shaping options. They've got consistent power output, they have more consistent color, and they don't need frequent battery replacements. When you're in the studio, they recycle much more quickly, and they have modeling lights so that you can see light patterns before you take your shot. So contrary to that, or on the other side of that, why would you use speedlights? Well, for one, you already own them. You probably have speedlights around. They're obviously very lightweight. They're easy to travel with. Only need AA batteries. And if you're a TTL shooter, which I hope you're not, but if you're a TTL shooter, they can do TTL. So with the advantages of each, well, what are the disadvantages? Well, obviously our strobes are heavier. They're larger units. They're a little bit more to carry around. When you're running out in the field on a battery, you don't get the modeling light. The modeling light is disabled so that you have something that's going to last a lot longer out in the field. Also, the flash tubes on a studio strobe are more exposed. In fact, if I turn my 400 RX here from Bowens, you can see I've got the flash tube and its modeling light sitting right out of here. And if you have the reflector off, you can see it is exposed. So just be careful because you don't want to have no reflector on here and have that thing drop because you're going to need to buy yourself a new flash tube. How about speedlights? Well, speedlights are not anywhere near as powerful. If you're using them a lot, you're going to need frequent battery changes. They are prone to overheating. They have slower recycling times. They have inconsistent power and color, particularly as the batteries start to discharge. You also need adapters like this to mount them to light stands. And you need separate accessories to mount light modifiers. However, using them together can be very useful. You might not want to carry an entire studio of monolights with you, but having one, along with a couple of strobes to act as a hairlight accent fill light, really can complete the entire picture. So what we're going to do is we went out and did a shoot recently in Rockwood State Park, which is in Sleepy Hollow, New York. We're going to set up our lights there, we're going to set up our speedlights and our strobe, and create some really nice portraits on location. So let's first head out and see the location and take a look at the gear that we use for the shoot. So we've made our first stop in our environmental shoot here, and it might look kind of weird having a light like this out underneath this incredible tree. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to take our studio light and we're going to use it out in this incredible scene. There's going to be a lot of advantages to this because we get to use our studio light shaping tools, which are going to give us a lot more control of the light. So I've got my one studio light. I just brought one Gemini 500 here, and I brought my softbox. And this is one of the coolest accessories I have ever seen. I don't know why everyone doesn't do this. If you've ever dealt with softboxes before, trying to put the things together without breaking something sometimes is a real struggle. Well, Bowens came out with this thing called a quick ring, and it's a folding adapter ring for the softbox. The beauty is, well, one, it allows you to fold flat, so it makes this stuff really easy to carry around and to store when you're not using it. But when you're ready to use it, you just simply flip the ring up and you got your softbox. I mean, let's see that again. I mean, how amazing is that? It's just a little clip right there, open and close it, and it also makes putting it together in the first place so much easier. That's it. Now I'm ready to put this on my light. I'll hook it up to my battery and I'll have my main light. Now in addition, I've got two strobes with me. One I'm going to put on a light stand. That'll probably be my fill light. And another one I'm going to use for a hair light or a background accent light. And to place that, I brought another cool piece along. This is called an alley clamp, and it's got a little ball mount on the side of it. This clamp's pretty strong, as Jen just witnessed when she tried to actually open it up and needed two hands to do this. We're going to actually just use the tree branches around here and clamp this onto the tree so we can put it wherever we want. It also has an adapter for a light stand on the other side, so you can use these things anywhere. Love these, great accessory. Allows you to put a light anywhere. So we've got Gabby here. We're going to walk around, find some really cool places. We're going to meter, we're going to use pocket widgets to tie it all together, and we're going to get some great environmental portraits. So let's go. This is an amazing place. So let's take a quick tour of our gear that we're going to use today so we can see how we get things started. As we saw before, I've got a Bowens Gemini 500 up here with the softbox on it, and on the back I've got the battery cable rather than an AC cable. So this is running down to the travel pack, and this is going to power our flash. Now I'm shooting at 200 ISO, and it's fairly dark in here, but we have big powerful lights. So I've got the light turned down pretty far. It's down to its 2 setting, and what that's going to mean is it's going to allow the battery pack to give us a lot of shots. In fact, at the lowest setting, this big battery will give us about 750 shots. We're going to be up a little bit from that. Maybe it'll give you 350, but we're probably going to need maybe 50 shots, and that's it. So one other addition we've made to the Gemini is we do have the Pocket Wizard receiver board in here, and it slips right into a slot right on the back of the monolight. Now it's very cool in that it can basically do everything a +3 does. Now, I'm using a Sekonic 478 DR meter, and the way I program what channel and zone I want this to be on is when you turn the light on, you've got 10 seconds, it's listening, and I just hit the fire button, or in this case the measure button on the meter, and it will learn what setting I had here. So I can make this any channel and any zone I want. So now when I take a reading, I can just hit this. I don't know if you saw it, the light just popped from me taking a reading. So that's how I program this. So let's take a look at our other 2 lights that are on the set. So here's light number 2. I'm mixing lights. I just use what I happen to have around, and that's one of the beauties of this system. We're shooting everything in manual. It doesn't matter what light we use. I've got my Bowens as my main light. My B light over here, my fill light, is just a Canon 580 EX2. And I've got this hooked up to a Pocket Wizard +3 here using their extension cable. And this is set on channel 18 zone B. My main light's on channel 18 zone A. The beauty of that is without having to leave my position, I can decide if I want to turn my accent light on and off. I've also got a third light, which is my hair light, and I can do that all right from this meter. That's the real cool part of it. Now I've set this ahead of time. I'm a pretty low power because we're in a dark area. This is set at 1/32 power. What that means is it's going to recycle pretty quickly since it's only a fill light, and the set of 4 batteries we have in here, which are fairly fresh, should last us all day. So that's our B light. Let's take a look at our C light, which is going to be our hair light. All right, so here's our C light. I've got a Sony flash up here, again with a Pocket Wizard. This one is connected with the same kind of cable system. This is on channel 18 zone C. This is hooked up to an alley clamp, that thing I showed you before, and it's simply clamped onto a branch, so I can put this thing anywhere I want. In addition, I've got a Rogue grid that is sitting over front of the flash head. And what this is going to do is it's going to keep the light from spreading out. I want it to be very directional. This is just going to be used to illuminate the back of the hair here to add a little bit of separation from the background. And again, I can decide if I want this on and off. From the meter, I can turn it on and off right from there because this is on zone C. Again, everybody's on channel 18. Now, one last element. We've got our 3 lights. Yeah, right here, come on through. And we brought with us our Gabby. So Gabby's gonna be our model today. Now she has dark hair. We've got a dark background behind us. And what's gonna control the background is one last piece, and that's gonna be shutter speed. And what I'll show you is what's gonna happen if we shoot at, say, 1/200th of a second, where the background's gonna go almost completely black. And then we're gonna go to about 1/20th or 1/30th of a second, which sounds like, unless Gabby is really still, she's going to be all blurry. That's not the case because the flashes are providing, in that case, about 90% of the light. So there's very little ambient light that's actually going to be illuminating her. So the flashes are going to stop the motion. They're very short duration. They're maybe 1,000th of a second. And by dragging that shutter, by bringing it down to a 30th or a 20th of a second, it's going to allow some of the green trees in the background that are so pretty to illuminate up. Now, one thing I do need to be careful of, though, is you can see there's a little bit of dappled sunlight coming through. Gabby, if you look right towards me, you can see that the front of her nose lights up there. I still don't want to fight that, even though my flash is 90%. I don't want it to cause any modeling, so I do need to make sure that her face is in complete shade. So by turning her right towards, look at Rick, right towards the camera, by having her here, all of the light that's going to be on her face is going to be from the flashes. So that's it. So let's get ready for our first part of our shoot. So a couple questions came in that I want to answer. I do want to make sure that the questions make sense and have some continuity with the video we just played, but there's a couple questions that came in that I really want to address. First of all, and actually the same question from two different people, how did I eliminate the green reflection that would normally be cast on the skin of the model? Do I gel? Do I do post-production, etc.? And someone asked again, when I do this, when I use a flash on this, on the non-flashed part of the face, get a green color cast. How do you deal with that? Great question. And two different things to consider. One, when we were in the full shade, like you saw in that setting, the lights were providing 90% of the light. And the meter told us that. That's one of the beauties of having a light meter to do that. Because when I took my measurements with the meter told me the lights were 90% of the light. So the light temperature and the color is all coming from the light. Now, if you're in a situation where you've got a lot of close green reflection reflecting on your subject's face, yes, that can be a problem. But I don't gel. What I do in that case is I use a color checker passport. I'll take a shot of this and I'll create a custom camera profile under those lighting conditions and what's reflecting back on the subject. Now, if there's way too much green in the scene, the custom camera profile will fix that. So that's all done in post. Since I'm shooting in RAW, I create a profile for the scene. Anything that's overly green just gets subtracted right out and you get perfect neutral skin tones again. But great question. And that is something that can happen. It just depends on the lighting. And what's in the foreground. We did not have any grass under this area. It was all just kind of brown earth and mulchy kind of stuff. So we didn't have green reflecting up from below. So that minimized that. Really, most of the green was in the background, not really coming onto the subject that much. This was providing all the light on the subject, so wasn't an issue in that case. Someone asked about settings on the strobes. We'll get to that after we get a little further in. And someone asked, when I use the Rogue Grid, which you saw on, actually I was on my Sony flash, what zoom do I put the flash on? I had it zoomed all the way out. I can't remember, it was 105 or 120 degrees, or 120 millimeters, something like that, whatever the full zoom was, so that the flash was going all the way out. Technically, it doesn't matter, because the grid is making the light stay in that kind of that cylinder as it's coming through. However, it allowed me to minimize the power and get the most out of my light, but good question. We'll continue on more about that, but I want to bring up something else, something that wasn't mentioned when we were talking about all this, and that's price. Isn't it expensive to do that kind of stuff when you're out in the field? The answer is, you might be surprised. The differences between a studio strobe like this out in the field and a simple speed light is practically nothing. Case in point, this is the Gemini 400RX. This is a 400 monolight. This light alone is $399. My Sony strobe, my Sony flash that I was using with that Rogue Grid is $549. $399, $549. A complete kit of these, which is 2 monolights, the reflectors, the stands, umbrellas, and a carrying kit is $849. Just compare that to a couple of speedlights. That's $150 to $200 less than 2 speedlights with no accessories at all. Add in the travel pack battery system, which we've got right here. You'll see, you're going to learn about this a little bit more, my new best friend. These are started about $620, but this combined with a complete studio kit of these is still the same price as 2 speedlights in one of those wireless commanders. Now, we're going to shoot under 3 different ambient light conditions when we're out in the park. The park was a beautiful location. First time I had shot there, I will be back. We had a beautiful tree canopy with an open middle. You couldn't have constructed a better spot to shoot portraits in. However, sometimes the best you can hope for is partial shade. And in a worst case scenario, you might be in a place where full sun is all you've got. Now, before we can actually start shooting, we need to place and measure our lights. Now, to make all our lights work together, as well as work with the ambient light, we need to explore how metering the lights provides the information you need to craft your portrait. We're also going to test how the shutter speed affects the background contribution and what it does to the mood of the environment. You might be very surprised where we end up with our shutter speed in order to get that kind of background coming in a little bit, yet still have our subject lit as well. So the meter is going to allow us to get the information we need for that perfect exposure. The pocket wizards, which we'll see a little more detail as well, allow everything to tie together. All of these lights, the camera, all fire together just by using the pocket wizard. So let's head back to our shaded area and try this out. So I've got Gabby here in position. What I need to do first is Yes. Okay, so if Gabby's in the position that we're going to photograph her, what I need to do is meter each of the lights. And I'm going to do that with the Sekonic 478. So I've got my main light coming right to here. It's the only light we're using. So I'm just going to, actually let's get you right where you're going to be. And I'm going to meter from her face back to the light. Back to the light because it's the only light we got, not back to the camera position. So I need to know what this light's contribution is on her face. And I'm getting at 100th of a second, 200 ISO, f7, and that is 100% of the light that's hitting her face. What that means is that the ambient light is 5 or 6 stops lower than what the flash is putting out, so it's really not even making a contribution. So I'm bouncing back and forth 6.3 to 7. I'm going to go with 6.3. And again, that's 90% of the light. So that's our A light. Now I want to check the B light, and what I do is just on the meter, I'll show you this up close later. I just changed the zone on the meter so that it is now just 18 channel B, and I'm going to measure back to the other light. And I'm getting F4. So F4 to 6.3, that's 1 1/3 stop. Perfect, that's a nice ratio because that's going to give us a little over a 2-to-1 ratio from our main to our fill. And I may decide I don't want that. I may bring in a reflector instead, but we'll try that as well. Lastly, our hair light. I want to get the hair light, since her hair is dark, I want the hair light to be about the same as the main. So let's go ahead and turn on the hair light. So I'm going to turn off our other lights, and I've just got the hair light turned on, which is right behind me. So I'm going to meter back to it, and I'm getting F7, pretty close. I might want to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to turn the power and the hair light down just a smidge, and everything will be set. And then what we'll do is we'll build the lights to see what kind of look we get with each light. We'll do just the main, then the main and the accent, and then the main and the accent and the hair. So let's see what we get. Let me just turn this down first, and then we can start shooting. All right, so Gabby's in place. Now we're ready to start shooting. First thing I'm going to do is do a quick test just with the main light, and I'm going to show you what happens as we change the shutter speed. Again, the main light's going to be the same for each shot. I'm going to start at a 200th of a second and drop all the way down to a 20th. So I'm going to go 200, 100, 50, 20. So you can see what happens to the background, but the light on her doesn't change. I'm just going to bring this light a little bit closer. I'm going to move it about a foot closer. And I'm going to angle it down a little bit more. Because since Gabby's got the hair coming down, I don't want it to be casting a shadow there. So since I moved my light, I do need to remeter this light. So let's go ahead and get that. And now we're up to F9 right here. So now we're going to switch to F9 on the camera. So again, I'm at 200th of a second, and we're going to see what effect the shutter speed has. So Gabby, turn this, and actually like you were just before, turning your head up to here. That's perfect right there. All right, so there's 200th of a second. Let's bring it down to 100th of a second. Same shot. Now we can see the background starting to open a little bit, but still not enough. So let's go down to a 50th of a second. 50th of a second. Background starting to open a little more. And now let's open up all the way, excuse me, let's open up all the way to a 20th of a second. And again, you'd think Gabby'd have to be really still, but that's not the case. And in this case, adding a little ambient light is really working. So I got to figure out where I want to be. I think I'm going to probably go with the 50th of a second. Now, if I have Gabby start waving her hands real fast, yeah, let's do that and see. This is a 20th of a second. Let's see how much stopping that has. So go ahead, you can do that. And there's a very, very, very slight blur in her hands, but not as much as you'd think. Even at a 20th of a second, the flash is only about 1,000th of a second. So it has that stopping power. So we're going to go to 50th. So let me do one more shot with a 50th of a second. All right, go ahead and get in position there. That's lovely. Very nice. Now, I actually like the ambient percentage better at 20, so what I'm really going to do is I'm going to add my fill light. Want to see how complicated that is? I just hit that. I hit B on my Pocket Wizard +3. That turns on my fill light over here. So let's go ahead and do the same shot, same looking position. And now we've got fill coming in from this other light. Now, this other light is a bare flash. I'm not using any light modifier on it because of the distance to Gabby. She's about 10 or 11 feet away from this flash. At this point, if I put a softbox or something on here, it really doesn't matter. It's become a point light source from this far away. This again is on, what power is this on? Tell me, what's its power on the back of that, Jen? Should we say 1/16th or 1/32nd? All right, that's on 1/32nd power. I may actually decide to bring that up. Let's take a look. Since we increased the power of our main up to F9, let's meter back to our B light, and I'm getting F5. So F5 to F9, how many stops is that? Let's see. Too many. So too many. 5, 6 to 8 would be 1. So it's 1 2/3 stops. It's almost 2 stops apart. Actually not bad. I'm just going to bring it up a smidge. All right, so I'm going to remeter that. 6.3, perfect. That's going to be a nice gentle light ratio. And again, since the light's so far away, I don't need a light modifier on it. Just leave it the way it is. So now I'm going to add our A and B light. And lovely, that's doing a nice job of starting to fill in. We've got this dark background. I do need to separate her out from that. So I'm going to turn off the B light. Let's turn on the hair light and see what just the main and the hair does. So come a little forward and again, look right up here. Perfect. It's almost shooting time at our different locations. A couple questions first. Someone asked about settings that I set my strobes and my speedlights at. I think I talked about that in the last video, but there's a little bit of experience that comes in, and if not, then that's what your meter is for. Generally, when I'm out in the field, I don't like to start at full power because then you have nowhere to go. I was actually starting on 2 on the Gemini 500, which is basically 40% of what the light is capable of. This is a 500 watt-second monolight, so 40% of that, just figure it out. It's 200 watt-seconds. I had the 10th set for 0, and that's one thing that's nice about moving up from the 400RX to the 500R is that you do have this digital readout. So if you take a meter reading, say, like I've got my meter here, I don't know if you saw the light flash there, so if I come over here and take a reading with my light, it tells me right here, and I got 5.6 at ISO 80 at a 60th of a second, whatever. I'm not actually shooting anything. If I wanted to change that to F8, just one simple turn of the dial. In fact, Rick, would you zoom in on here? Just want to show you the side of this light a little bit more. This is one of the advantages of moving up from the 400 to the 500 is everything is digital readout here. So if I want to add a full stop of light, I just do that. Turn it up to 3, and it just went from 5.6 to F8. Also, you see the light blink for a second. What it's doing is it's bleeding and recycling, so you don't have to pop the lights like you used to have to do in the past. Now, conversely, go back to 2. I'm back to 5.6. Let's say I wanted to go to 6.3, which is a third of a stop. All I'd have to do is go 1, 2, 3 on the tenths, and I could take a meter reading, and I'd know right then and there that I'm at 6.3. Now, over here on the 400RX, it's more of an analog scale, but it was working the same way. There are 6 increments here. This is a 400 watt second light. If I turn it up to all the way up to 6, you're going to get 400 watt seconds. So you can just kind of figure it out by there. It's pretty close to full stops when you go through these détentes, but you don't have to guess. That's what the meter does. As for the speedlights, good question there. You can do a test, and this is what I recommend you do. Take your speedlight in a dark room. Set your meter at 100 ISO. Put your flash on manual and set it at 1/8 power. Step off 10 feet or measure 10 feet. Take a reading of that light. You're going to get something like F8 at 100 ISO. That's about what most speedlights are going to come in. F8 to F6 at 10 feet away. Knowing that, that's going to give you an indication of what power that your flash is going to put out at F8 at 1/8 power. So then when you're out in the sun, you might find you need to go to a 1/4 or a 1/2 power. Takes a little bit of experience, but again, this will tell you the numbers. You don't have to guess. And once you learn, then you're going to know in the future, well, if I put my light 6 feet from my subject, that's f11. And it's as simple as that. So little experience is going to be different with each piece of gear, so you need to just spend a little time learning what it does. Someone asked, why did I meter with the dome in a couple of times? The dome in is for directional light. So I had different lights there. I had my main, I had my fill, I had a hair light. By having the dome in, you can see it's disappeared on the side here. If I go dome up and take a reading of, say, this light, well, it's also maybe going to pick up some contribution from one of the other lights. By putting a dome in, it's only going to measure the directional light. So I got to get my main light, my fill light, my hair light separately without any pollution from the other lights. When taking my final metering, if I'm going to go back to the camera, then I'll go dome out back to the camera. But for measuring each individual contribution, dome in. Someone asked about my ratios. It's going to vary depending on the subject and the drama you want to go. Anywhere from 1 stop difference to 2 or 3 stops difference. So if my main is at f8 and my fill is at 5/6, that's 1 stop apart. That's called a 2-to-1 light ratio. I generally like to go maybe a little bit more dramatic on lighting like that when I have someone who's young and very smooth skin like Gabby has. Then maybe I'll go 2 stops different. So maybe f4 here, f8 here. Again, it's something you got to play with and find the look that you like. Someone asked, will this Bowens light work in open sun, let's say at the beach? That's a good question. The light certainly will. However, if that's something you do for a living, you're going to do a lot of beach portraits, I might recommend you just step up, spend a little more money and go to the 500. 500 watt seconds with a softbox like this out in full sun will work, as you're going to see shortly. So stay tuned. I think that question will get answered for you. Somebody asked, when I went to a 20th of a second and a 50th of a second, what percentage of ambient was now the meter reading? And I actually remember that. It went down to only 80%. So 80% of the light was still coming from the strobes when we were at 1/20th of a second. That's why it still froze the motion pretty well. Even when Gabby started doing her fingers really fast back and forth like that, then you could see some blur. But for someone just gently standing, 20th of a second with 80% of the light coming from the strobes, is still going to remain sharp. All right, more questions. Somebody said, any alternatives for using a meter because they are pricey? Trial and error, not really a good way to do it. Here's what you can do. You don't have to start at the top. You can get a meter like this. This is a Sekonic 308. Let me just power this on here. This is a Sekonic 308. By the way, they only come in black now. Don't you wish you had a green one like me? What this is a very basic meter, and it will do both ambient and flash. It doesn't do the percentage. There's ways around that. I've done videos on that that cover as well. But these are just over $200. And the combination of this and Pocket Wizards and a color checker will change the quality of your photography overnight. So it's a tool, it's an investment, but it's really worthwhile. If you're not using a meter, there's no way for you to know ratios. Your camera can't do that because your camera's measuring light reflected back from the subject. This is the only way to measure the contribution of separate lights. So it's an investment, but again, just a little over $200 gets you all that information for better photography. Okay. Oh, I got a note here from Sil Arena. Sil, how are you? Sil is one of the masters of speedlights. He loves those things, and he wrote the book on it. So, hi, Sil, good to hear from you. Sil mentions for me to remind you guys that the zoom setting on the speedlight greatly affects the flash power at the center of the shot, and it can vary by as much as 2 stops when zoomed to 20 millimeters spread into 200 millimeters. Good point, Sil, and listen to the man. Check out his stuff. All right, let's go. More questions, but let's do some shooting. Now, we did 3 different locations. First, full sun. In this case, I used the lights to fill in shadows and add some shape. Now, in some cases, you can actually power the sun for a more dramatic look, and that allows you to actually underexpose the background. It's a dramatic look. It's not a standard look, but it does work well. For standard fill flash, you guys know I go for that 30% fill. Now for backlit in full sun, so you're still in full sun, but now the sun is coming over the subject's shoulder, the face is more in shadow. In that case, you want the light filling the face to get closer to the ambient light, but don't match it, because then it's going to look weird. You just want to get it to within 1 to 1.5 stops of the ambient. So let's say you take a meter reading, and I think we were at F13 in the sun. We added enough light to bring the face up to F10. So it's getting us close, but again, remember your eyes are expecting a bright background to be bright. And if you match the face to that, it's going to look weird. Next, partial shade. In this case, the subject's in the shade, but we've got a bright background. Again, use the lights to balance the subject in the shaded area with that background. Don't try to match the background, but you're going to again want to be within 1 or 2 stops to keep the background from blowing out. In this case, the lights might be contributing anywhere from 30 to 70% of the light that's actually illuminating the subject. And then lastly, full and dark shaded areas. When you can find them, the greatest ways to shoot. It's almost like shooting in the studio. The lights become the primary light source. The background's going to go dark, and you can't actually even take it all the way almost to black. Ambient light is controlled by the shutter speed, as we just saw. The strobes are going to contribute anywhere from 60 to 100% of the light. As I said, this is like shooting in the studio. You're providing most of the light. So since this was the easiest one, let's start with our full shade shoot underneath the beautiful tree. What are you doing back there?
Chilling.
Yeah, okay.
Enjoying the day.
All right. So we just got some nice shots of Gabby, and I decided I really liked the effect of the 20th. Come over here, you're too far behind me. Okay. I really liked the effect of the 20th of a second, because it opened up the background a little more, add a little bit of the ambient warmth to what's going on, and just really created a nice portrait. So again, very simple. We got one Gemini out on location, and we've got the softbox, so we can do everything that we would do in a studio right here. Our hair light's behind us, our fill light over there just with the Canon. Again, a Canon flash, a Sony flash, and the Gemini. It doesn't matter, it's light. We're in manual, we're not doing any of that TTL nonsense.
News to me.
Yes. Say, I hate TTL.
I hate TTL.
There we go. Okay. We don't like TTL. We want to control it, and the light meter gives us the information. And what our friend Lee Varus told us last week when we were out shooting with him is, he had a great answer for why use a meter. His response was, it's so easy to get it right. Why not do it? Why go through that bracketing? Why go through TTL and have to do exposure adjustments every shot, and you end up missing, oh, that was a perfect exposure or a perfect expression on you, yet I missed it because I got to go this, oh, I got to adjust this. None of that nonsense. The meter gives us the information. So now that we've got that, now we can have some fun. We're going to bring in some props. We'll get Gabby behind trees, hanging upside down from trees, all kinds of other stuff. But it's going to be easy because we've got everything we need right here. I'm going to do some more studio kind of looks. There's something I want to try with her with the softbox. We'll bring in our lights. It's going to be fun.
Yay.
So let's just go ahead and shoot. Say when?
Ready.
Remind me to get Jen a tape measure. Cross your arms. Nice. And this little smile.
Oh, that's really great.
Oh, gorgeous. You make it easy, girl.
Joe, can you do that last sequence one more time?
Bring your hands down around front of your face a little bit and then below. There we go. Beautiful. Again, keep your head, keep your nose pointing about right. Hi, Gabby.
Hi, Joe.
So we found this other interesting spot, and what I wanted to do was use this parasol as both a kind of an element and a reflector for Gabby. So what we've got is, we got our main over here again, but you see back here, I've got the Sony with the grid spot, again clipped to a tree with the alley clamp, and I've got the Canon here on a light stand. First thing I did was put the Canon right behind Gabby with the light coming straight up, so that when the parasol was here, the light was coming up from behind her and illuminating the parasol and reflecting a little bit back down on her head, with the softbox providing the main. Then we decided to see what it looked like with the light coming through the parasol instead, which I think for this one I liked a little better, because this is fairly translucent. And by having the light come through, it created a nice bright spot that added a lot more dimension in contrast to what's going on with you, because since the main is coming directionally, we had shadow on one side of her face, and then this was lit up. It was very nice. Then to fill in the shadow just a little bit, particularly underneath her jawline, we took the third light, the Canon Speedlight, set it low, and had it coming in very low power. In fact, this is at, oh, what's this at? I think it's at 128th power, maybe. It's 64, yeah, it's at 128th power, so it's very low, and it's about 5 feet away, coming from this side, and coming up underneath to add a little bit of light here and open up the shadows a little under her jaw. And this is fun stuff. It's just like running in a studio, isn't it? And the difference is we have the beauty of the Gemini strobe here, giving us its power along with its light shaping tools. It's very cool. So this has been our full shade shoot. Now we're going to change things up, and we're going to put you in the shade but with a bright background. So now we're going to have to balance the light on her so that it looks natural, but there's still a closer ratio of what's going on in the foreground to the background. So let's go find another spot. Yeah, okay, now. Love it, there we go. Love it, that's beautiful. Oh yeah. Nice. Good. Oh yeah. Smile. So I guess you can see we were having a lot of fun. Gabby was great to work with, and what a beautiful location. I can't wait till the fall when the leaves in there start to change color. We will definitely do a portrait shoot back there. A couple more questions that are appropriate to what we just talked about. Someone asked about camera movement at such a slow shutter speed, particularly if you're using a telephoto lens. True, you have to be steady, but with 80 to 90% of the light coming from the strobes, remember the strobe duration is only about 1,000th of a second. So if your shutter speed's at a 20th of a second, you're letting only still 10 to 20% ambient light in. Can you get a little blur if it happens? Yes, just like you saw when Gabby's fingers were moving, but something that is moving slowly is going to get frozen in place. Someone asked about an opinion about dome in, dome out causes more questions on metering than pretty much anything. All right, so here's, really the trick is be consistent. You can always use the dome out if you want. I know people that do that, and what they do if there's multiple lights, they'll just kind of put their hand out to shield the dome from this other light. That's another way to do it. My way, here's how I do it. Okay, if I have multiple lights going on and I need to measure my contributions of each light, I will go dome in. If I'm only using a single light, let's say I'm just using this softbox and then maybe I've got a reflector on the other side. In that case, dome in, dome out doesn't matter. There's only one light source hitting the subject, and I will meter to the light, not back to the camera. Why? Because there's only one light. And I want to make sure that the side of the face that's getting that one light is exposed correctly. I don't want it to get blown out. If I've got multiple lights, so I've got a main coming from here, I've got a fill coming from here, there's going to be some bleed on either side from both lights. So I've got my main coming here, but since it's a big light source, it's going to wrap around to the shadow side of the face. If I've got a fill coming from here, it's going to add a little bit of a contribution to this side of the face. So in that case, when I've got multiple lights both illuminating the face, then I will meter generally under the chin back to the camera because it's getting the sum total of all the lights that are illuminating the face. Takes a little practice, a little experience, but just really find out what works for you and be consistent with it. Here's a good question. Somebody asked, have I made any compensations for the strobe and speedlight Kelvin temperatures? Meaning, is there a big difference in the color temperature between the two lights? I found it really no. They're actually pretty close. Maybe 300 K apart. And when you're in a 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin range, which is what these lights generally fall in, 300 K is barely enough for you to even be able to see it with the naked eye. So I found that it wasn't really an issue. Someone asked, well, when I was talking about the percentage of light coming from the strobes versus the ambient, How did I know that in the light meter? That's a real easy question. It actually shows it right on the display. When I take a reading, you'll see a percentage number right on the display. That happens for the 478. It also happens for my big buddy here, my favorite. This is a Sekonic 758DR. This shows you as well. The 308, the basic meter, does not tell you percentage of strobe to ambient. There are some other ways around it, but this does not tell you that. That's what you get when you do move up a little bit. There's a couple of questions that are very detailed, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy all the questions down, and if you guys could send me an email, we'll give you a way to reach me after the webinar. I will answer those directly because they get a little more too much detail for right now. So let's continue on. I want to talk a little bit about the travel pack battery, because this was the first time I had the opportunity to use that, and once again, these webinars are costing me money. I know some of you guys complain that after I do a webinar, you guys go out and buy stuff. It costs you money. It costs me money too. In fact, I had this home in my studio the other day. I was just testing it out, this Speedlight, and my wife saw it, and she said, would you check to see how much that is? No, on second thought, no, just bring me one home. So yes, this costs me money too, and I think this thing's gonna cost me money. But what this battery does is it allows you to power up to 2 heads, 2 strobes with 1 battery. If not, there's a little plug that goes in here. You can see there's a reading here. It just goes from 25 to 100%, just on off. There's both an AC and a car battery charger available for it. I shot all day with this thing, and it never lifted 100%. So, and I shot I remember in Lightroom, it was 283 shots I did through the course of the day. And I was generally on the setting of 2 to 3, which meant 40 to 60% power, and shooting all day. And you saw that some of the shots I was shooting fairly quickly, and I had no trouble keeping up. And what this battery system allows you to do is if you're starting out or if you're looking for a studio strobe system, you could get a set like this 400RX kit or a 500R kit for relatively little money, add a battery to it, and now you have a professional system that you can take anywhere. It gives you the benefits that a studio strobe, and the battery gives you freedom from AC power and cables. Now, the performance, as I mentioned, it's going to depend on how many watt seconds you use. If you have these things turned all the way up, you're going to get less flashes. If you get 2 750s, there's even bigger models than these, 750s and 1000s and 1500 watt second monolights. 750 flashes at 200 watt seconds, down to maybe 100 flashes if you go all the way up to 1500 watts, which would be 2 750 watt second heads. So that's at full power. That's a lot off of 1 pack. Now, if you do go full power, do understand that you're completely wiping out the capacitors in these things that provide the strobe. So it's going to take a longer time to recycle. Full power, it might take you 10 seconds to recycle. But under controlled conditions like you saw, if you're not shooting full power, adjust your ISO and aperture accordingly, recycling is very quick. So we've done our full shade. That was an easy one. And I know some of you have asked questions about full sun and backlit. So that's what we're going to do now. Having your subject in shade with a sunlit background is a fairly common experience. And it's something I will do on location if I want to incorporate the background into the scene. What we're going to do is use our lights to get close to the background light to make it look natural. Having to shoot full sun at midday is a worst case scenario, but you're going to run into it. You're going to have a beach shoot. You're going to have a place where there's no trees or no buildings to hide around. We were able to pull it off. So let's head back to 2 locations where we addressed each of those lighting conditions. Okay, interesting location here, but very difficult to shoot. If you actually pan over to where Gabby is, you can see her on there. Even when I look through the camera, she is in complete silhouette if I have the background exposed correctly. So again, I want to try to add enough light on her that it looks natural on her, but I don't want to match exactly what the background's doing. However, as an experiment, what I can do is adjust my shutter speed up and down to bring the background exposure up and down along with that. So I've got a fill light over in here because I want to add in a little to both sides, but let me get my main light. And again, I'm just going to point back to the light. I'm getting 6.3, and in the full shade like this, that's 90% of the light. So I just metered my light. I've got my main here on the Gabby at 6.3, And my accent light, my fill light is at f4. Good, that's a nice ratio I've got. That's stop and a third. If I take my camera at 160 to the second at 6.3 and just lock off into the background, into the Hudson River there, it tells me actually at 160 to the second, that's actually a perfect exposure. So they're actually going to match. That may actually end up looking a little unnatural, but we're going to try it. So what I'm going to do to adjust the background is I'm going to open up the shutter. I'm going to slow down the shutter a little bit to open up the background to make it look a little brighter, which is going to be a little more natural looking because she's in the shade. But let's go ahead and shoot a whole sequence. I'm going to start at a 200th of a second and come all the way down to a 50th of a second in increments. But my main light's going to stay the same. Remember, this is 90% of the light with her in shade. So let's start at the correct one. I'm going to do 160th of a second at 6.3. And again, even through my camera, all I see is Gabby's silhouette. But when I take the shot, everything is good. Great, that's nice. Yeah, there we go. All right, now I'm going to come down to 50th of a second, which is a full stop. Let's see what that does. And at that point, the background's starting to blow out. However, it almost looks more natural when we do that. As a giggle, I'm going to come all the way down to a 25th of a second. And let's see what happens. Again, remember the flash is 90% of the light here. And the background, we're starting to really blow out the background there. So that's a little too much, but a 50th of a second actually works. It actually looks natural. So let's do a couple of those. Great. Now, just to see the other end of that, I'm going to shoot one at a 200th of a second, just to see the background actually start to go down darker. Bring your hands in a little, Gabby. There we go. Yeah. See, now, even though that's correctly exposed, and in fact, she's now better lit than the background. The background's a little underexposed at that. It's a look, but it does look somewhat unnatural. She's very separated out from the background. So it's like a portrait of her kind of stuck in there. You might be after that. So you know how to do that. It's the shutter speed that's going to affect the background. The lights are going to be the same. The exposure on her is never changing. So I think we're done here. Okay, so we've chosen a really difficult situation right here. We've got Gabby in the bright sun, but she's backlit and she's wearing a hat. So what we need to do is find out a couple of things. One, what's the ambient light? How bright is the light here? How bright is the light in the scene behind us? I need to know the shadow areas of her. I've got a fill light over here that's going to be illuminating this part of her shoulder. So what is the light level here? And then the same thing on her face underneath the hat. I don't necessarily need to match it, but I need to get it close. So the procedure will be first, I need to get an ambient reading. So I change my meter to ambient. I'm going to take a reading here, but I've got a specular dot of the sun hitting my dome. If I do that, it's going to skew the reading, so I'm going to end up underexposed. So I need to make sure that that little dot doesn't exist. So I'm just going to put my finger in between that part of the dome and the sun, get my reading, and I get F13. Lovely. Now I need to know what is the shadow side of Gabby doing. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get shadow readings first in full shade from this side. I'm only getting F4 here. And then on her face underneath the hat, I'm getting a lot different here because there's a brighter side. Now I'm getting F5, F5. So I need to add a lot more light. That's the beauty of having the studio strobe. This is powerful enough to work in the bright sun. So Gabby, if you would just come about right here, and I'm going to use our main. So now I need to find out how much light I need to add to get her close. Now remember the background and the ambient is F13. I don't want to match them because if I do, it's going to look unnatural because since she's in shadow a little bit, you're expecting her to be a little darker. You want that to go bright. So I'm going to shoot for around F10 or so on this light. So let's go ahead and switch to strobe. Let me turn on just my main light. And in the shadow, again, pointing back towards the flash, F11. Pretty close. Let's one more. Let me get I want you to get you in shadow there. F10. Okay, F10, and this light is providing 80%. So F10 to F13, that's 2/3 of a stop. Might work pretty well. So let's go with that. We're going to go with F10. And then over on the other side here, I've got my fill because I want to add in some over here. Remember, this was even much darker. So let's see what we get here. Let me cycle my light. So Gabby, look where Rick is. I'm at an 1/8 power on this light, and I want to do this to add a little bit of an accent here. So it's up. I got to turn on my B light, because that's what, remember these are Pocket Wizard +3s. So let me turn on just the B, and let's see what we've got going here from that light. And that brings that up to F9. That's probably a little hot. I want to bring that down. I just want this to be a fill. So I'm going to drop the power on this light. I'm at an 1/8 power. I'm going to go down to a 1/16. And we're at 100 ISO, by the way, right now, and the shutter speed's 160th of a second. F7, that's better. So I've got F7 here, F10 here, F13 ambient. Which setting am I going to use on the camera? She's the most important thing here, right? Yes, we need her face to be exposed correctly. So I need to expose her face. If the background goes 2/3 of a stop over, that's okay. It's going to look natural. So F10 on my camera, let's do it. Thank you guys for the great questions, by the way. The chat room is really going crazy, and take advantage of it if you haven't yet. If you have a real technical question, there are all kinds of people in there to help you. We've got people from Bowens, people from Pocket Wizard, people from Sekonic, Sillerina is in there, Tony Corbella's in there, so we've got an all-star cast in there, all in the chat room, so take advantage of it. A couple questions that I'd like to address. First, somebody said, isn't it true that shutter speed will affect both ambient and subject exposure at low flash contribution percentages? Yes, it will, because if it's a low flash contribution, the ambient light is your primary light. So obviously, as you increase your shutter speed, that light's going to come down. However, your flash is going to stay the same. So what's going to happen is the flash percentage is going to go up because it's constant. Someone asked, do I use mostly broad lighting when shooting outdoors with flash and a dark background? I wouldn't say mostly. And again, to recap, if you're not familiar with the term, broad lighting is when the side of the face that's closest to the camera is getting the main light. Short lighting is when the side of the face away from the camera is getting the main light. With Gabby, I had done many shoots with her before, so I knew what worked with her. She was a completely symmetrical face, and she was kind of right in the middle. So broad and short lighting both worked beautifully with her. So I just happened to shoot a lot of broad lighting stuff, although I did some short lighting stuff with her too on that shoot. It's really going from mood. Broad lighting is a little more open, a little more friendly. Short lighting is generally a little more dramatic and has a slimming effect, which she did not need. So it depends on your subject. Someone asked, what did I do for white balance in this situation? Since we were moving around a lot, generally what I did was I left my white balance on daylight. Obviously I had sun, so that was daylight. Strobes are technically a little bit warmer than daylight. Daylight might be anywhere from 5,700 to 6,500 Kelvin, where these strobes are going to be anywhere from 4,900 to 5,500. That means that they're a little bit warmer, a little bit more yellow, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to add a little warmth to the skin, and it wasn't enough to make a difference, so I went with daylight on that. Someone asked, okay, this is a good question. Backlight situation with strobe during sunset can sometimes make it look like the subject is in front of a fake backdrop. Yes, you've got a very warm light behind you at a sunset, and your strobes are 5,000 or 5,500 K, and it's going to make it look like they were just plucked in there. So how do you deal with that? In that case, I'd recommend putting gels over your light. You're going to want to yellow down the lights to get closer. You don't have to match, but you want to get closer to that background, or it's going to look fake and like they're just plugged in there. Someone asked, was I spot metering or matrix metering while shooting into the bright background? First of all, my camera isn't metering at all. My camera is on full manual. All of my exposure information is coming from here, from my light meter. That's why I was metering from Gabby back to the camera, because I wanted to know the light that was hitting her face. That said, I did use the camera on matrix mode to get a meter reading of the background, of the river off in the distance, to just kind of give me a ballpark of how bright it was back there, so I knew how much light I needed to add to the subject to make them balance out. Good question, though. Someone asked if I had the light so far. They thought I had the light too far back. With the softbox, am I not losing the soft quality of the light? Technically, I'm losing a little bit. I had the light somewhere between 5 and 6 feet away from her. However, with this size softbox, that's still a fairly large light source. It wasn't becoming a light source, a point light source. If I had gotten 10 or 12 feet away, then you're right, I might as well have just taken the softbox off. Remember, the larger the light source, the softer the transition from light to dark. However, at 5 to 6 feet away with this big a light box, it still was providing what I needed, and it gave me the flexibility to shoot 3/4, even full length, or up close, and still get a fairly decent transition from light to dark. And remember, in pretty much every case, I had another light. I had my accent light, which was one of the Speedlights, that was adding a contribution to the shadow side, which further softened that transition from light to dark. Let's see. Someone asked, do I ever use TTL? No. Simple answer. No, I don't believe in it. Ever. I hate TTL. Okay. All right. I think that's it for now. Again, some of your questions are very detailed. I would like to address them, but it's too much for live here. When we do our follow-up, we'll include an email where you can get to me. Send me a note. I'd be happy to talk to you. Let's just do it one-on-one. So let's kind of sum up because we're just about out of time. So what did we learn? What did I learn? I learned that using strobes together with speedlights really gave me the best of both worlds. I used one strobe for my main light because I didn't feel like carrying 3 of these around, and I used the speedlights for accent and separation lights. Having the pocket wizards, I used +3s, +X's would work just as well. What's nice about the +3 is it allowed me to turn lights on and off right from here or right from the top of my camera. I've got one sitting here. The pocket wizards let me put the lights wherever I wanted, including in the early with that one sitting up in the tree. I don't need line of sight from my camera to fire those, and these really, the +3 and the +X are just bulletproof. For my light meter, I used a 478. It eliminated guessing, eliminates chimping, eliminates bracketing. And to steal a line from our friend Lee Veris, why not get it right the first time? You won't lose any shots. You're not going to waste, you're not going to have to sort through them, no chimping. So using one of my strobes on location really made this one of the best times I've ever had shooting portraits. And yes, the crew, Rick and Jen, and of course Gabby, really made it a lot of fun. I've had a lot of success with my Speedlights, but being able to use a monolight strobe as my main light did make a big difference. It gave me a lot more power and the beauty of these light shaping tools. Ooh, before I go away, I got to show you something. I'm going to take this one off a second. I want to show you something about these lights. Let me just take this off. This is the coolest thing. I showed this to my wife, and yes, this is what cost me money. Have you ever tried to put together a softbox? You can punch yourself in the face sometimes trying to get these things put together. And once they're together, you don't want to take them apart. And if that's the case, they take a lot of room for storage. Bowens came up with this ring that collapses. It makes putting together softboxes really easy. They fold down into nothing so that they can travel and be stored. And it's just a simple little switch here right on the side. Just click it and that big softbox folds down to nothing. It allows you to store them or travel with them. I don't know why everyone doesn't do this. It also makes it very easy to put them together. Store it this way, and when you're ready to use them, here's how complicated it is to put it back together again. You just fold it right back up, and that's it. This thing is a beautiful system. You want one of these. And these light shaping tools became available to me because I was using the travel pack battery system that allowed me to use this Gemini monolight out in the field. Wonderful thing, and I'm going to be doing this all the time. And combined with, again, my little friends, my pocket wizard +3s, and of course my meter, I got perfect exposures and controlled light ratios all day long under wildly different lighting conditions. By the way, we will post some of the images with the follow-up email to you guys so you can take a closer look at them. But even under the worst lighting conditions, backlit, full sun, great results every time. I'm completely sold on this system. It's going to cost me money. Whenever and wherever I can, I'm going to use it because it's like having my studio with me. I hope you guys saw the beauty and ease of use this way of location portraits work. To me, the results speak for themselves, and you and your clients are going to love the results. And yes, if your clients love the results, what happens? They buy more stuff. So that's it for today. I'd like to thank Bowens, Pocket Wizard, and Sakonic for sponsoring us. And of course, I want to thank you guys all for watching. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks for your interest and your feedback. It's always welcome. We've got some more cool stuff coming up. I'll be back Thursday. We're going to have a program with Lee Varus on shooting out in landscape when the weather doesn't cooperate. And next week, we've got Tony Corbell back, who's going to wow us again with his incredible teaching. So keep learning, keep shooting, look for that follow-up email, and have fun while you're out there. Until next time, on behalf of our crew, be well. We'll see you soon.